Hi, and welcome. Welcome to our virtual workshop, Chapters as a Member Engagement channel. So, is your association targeting members based on career stage? You know, making a communication effort, a program and service effort, a connection based on where your members are in their career stage? What about your chapters? Well, we've got quite a bit of data now, some pretty rich data that tells us that members' needs do in fact vary. Needs and wants do in fact vary by career stage. And in fact, that's more relevant than generation, age, or frankly, where they work or live. In fact, if we can really take that information around the career stages and bring it into our planning and our marketing and our strategies, we can really create deeper engagement with members. That's what we want to talk about today. We're going to spend the first part of this with a deep dive into that research that I mentioned. We're going to take a look at what the research tells us around behaviors, motivations, and indeed loyalty based on where somebody is in their career stage. Then we're going to use Zoom breakout rooms to have you have great conversation and begin to develop a strategy that you can use in your own associations to help your chapters plug into that data. So let's get started. Speaking of getting started, I want us to get started by warming up our fingers. Because you see, this may be virtual, but we still want as much conversation as we normally would have. So we need you using the chat to really engage. We want you to ask questions. We want you to share ideas, to take something that you've heard and explore it a little bit further with the many folks that are here on this webinar with us. So warm your fingers up by telling us, what is your morning beverage of choice? Okay, maybe it's the standard coffee, maybe it's tea. How about a smoothie? Anybody that does a smoothie first thing? And I did work with a colleague whose morning drink was a large, and I mean a large, Diet Coke. So what's your morning beverage of choice? Okay, we're getting some fingers warmed up here. This is awesome. I'm seeing lots of coffees. So add to me, what's in your coffee? Couple of teas here. Yeah, a chai tea, awesome. Couple of smoothies. Ooh, that smoothie sounds, I need some recipes for these smoothies. All right, you guys keep chatting. Let me mention a couple of other ways for you to share your ideas or your opinions. We are in a Zoom meeting, which means you've got meeting controls, and one of your meeting controls is a place where you can create, where you can react without having to say a word or type anything. You can give a clap or a thumbs up. So this reaction will only stay for about 5 seconds. So if you understand this, go ahead and give me a thumbs up. Awesome. So it's not limited to just that. You can also go under the participants button where you can access some icons that will provide us a little bit more feedback. So we as the host and panelists get a sense of what's going on with you. So you can raise a hand there, you can answer a question, yes or no, up or down, tell us that you're going to grab a cup of coffee or you'll be right back, all right? So that's what's beautiful about the virtual environment is we have all these ways to give the same cues that you would with your eyes. So feel free to use those and stay engaged and keep this conversation moving. All right, so I am super excited to introduce the folks that are with me on this webinar because I am not alone, even though I'm the only one talking at the moment. I've got this incredible group of presenter speakers who are going to be joining me on video. I, of course, am Peggy Hoffman with Mariner Management, and my wonderful esteemed colleague Peter Houstel is here as well. Both of us are chapter execs, as well as doing consulting and work with associations and chapters. So we wear lots of hats. That's all I can say. Many titles, many hats.
We are here to guide you through the day as Conversation Catalyst. And of course, our partner in crime, Charlotte, is right along with us from Bill Highway. when people say to me, what does Charlotte do? I said, I don't know. I think she runs the joint over there because she is so involved and engaged. And introducing, I don't know how many of you know Natalie Bendick, but I have to tell you, by the way, well, according to years, she is finally legal. She has been with the Community Brands family in one way or the other for 21 years. I said to her, what's her title? And she was describing it. And I said, oh, so hold a second. You're all about the client. You're all about the customer. You're all about making sure we meet our members' needs. And she said, hey, yeah. I said, yeah, forget the title. We got you. Now, maybe the mic is going to be 4 of us, but you know, in our world, there's always more people behind. We've got an incredible team behind, none other than the Sarah Garrity, who is the face behind all of our communications. Grace, Tira, and Michelle are coming to us with Community Brands. Big round of applause. Community Brands has been an incredible team, with us in this particular program. So super delighted to have them on board. You'll learn a little bit more about each of these organizations. But as you know, nothing comes together unless there are people that are willing to roll up their sleeves, make an investment. And so I just have to make sure that you all know that behind the scenes, the people that are really here are our 3 companies. Charlotte, tell us a little bit about Bill Highway.
Perfect. So we know many of you on here, but for those who don't know, I wanted to quickly introduce you to all of us. So I'm Charlotte, as Peggy said. And we're Bill Highway, and we're dedicated to providing solutions to chapter-based associations to help you streamline a lot of the work that you do at National and a lot of the work that your chapter leaders and volunteers do and are tasked with to help bring data visibility across your entire organization. And of course, you know our co-host, Mariner Management. So Peggy, as if you even need an introduction, but I'll toss it back over to you.
Oh, well, thank you very much. We're just having a great time these days, helping our clients navigate to the virtual world, helping a couple of associations take their on the ground leadership trainings to virtual, and just doing lots of fun things. So it's always heartening for us to be around CRPs, our faves. And Natalie.
Thanks, Peggy. So as you guys might know, Community Brands is a company obsessed with helping passionate people and purpose-driven organizations achieve their missions through the use of technology. We're techies that want to make a difference in the communities in which we live and work and the industries in which we support you all. We offer software and services to associations and other orgs that improve operational efficiency and deliver a meaningful, positive experience to members. Including AMSs, career centers, LMSs, event technology, and chapter portals. Thanks so much. Back to Peggy.
All right, thank you. So Community Brands was a big supporter for our 2019 CEX. You guys remember CEX, don't you? And continues to support the efforts that we're doing to help build the community, which brings us to why we actually are here. All 3 of us, no. All of us on the call have a shared purpose to build community and to connect those of us that have chapters or components and who then work with those chapters or components. Our goal is to give an opportunity for you guys to get together, and that's what today is all about. I want to walk us through the agenda for today, and I really want us to look at it from 3 focuses, okay? The first is the basic agenda. So we're going to spend some time telling you what research tells us. Community Brands has done some phenomenal research on member engagement, digital strategy. We're going to tell you a little bit about what that research tells us. And then we're going to give you some real life examples, and we're going to send you into breakout rooms for some brainstorming. Now, I call this really kind of a rinse and repeat, because 2 and 3, we're going to rinse and we're going to repeat. So that we're going to do this a total of 3 times. So you guys get into that room and talk with your peers 3 different times. We'll have a really strong round. So that would be the flow. But what's the content? Well, we're going to take this conversation around tapping members, tapping chapters for member engagement, and we're going to look at it in 3 different focus areas. And our goal in these 3 focus areas is to get very deep in first, engagement. How can chapters generate engagement based on career stage? Really important question here, because we've been focused really on their generational or or whether they're volunteers or not volunteers, right? We want to now flip the script and talk about career stage. Secondly, we really want to take, particularly pertinent now, right? Way relevant, is technology. How do we tap technology? How do our chapters tap technology to really hone in on this, on what we understand about the digital needs of our members? And three, and final, is the experiences. How do chapters create powerful experiences? Now, in this particular time, and I think we all know this is going to be at least through the end of this year, our chapters are going to have to pivot to virtual. So we will talk a little bit. We have an example of an in-person and an example of a pivot to help us then go into a conversation around these. So you got the flow and you understand the questions. So what's the big picture here? Why are we actually taking this flow and addressing these three focus areas? It's because what you told us in the benchmarking, the chapter benchmarking study, was that most important reason for organizations to have geographic components was around this conversation on engagement. That was a shift from 2017 to 2019. But you also told us that at the bottom, at the end of the day, you weren't getting what you really needed out of that channel. So we said, well, let's have a conversation where we can talk about how can you help your components reach those new audiences to really engage them in some activities that are exciting. How can you help your geographic components tell the national story, the national message through the local neighborhood stories? How can you expand their ability to help members connect and really alleviate the isolation that all of us are feeling right now? And I guess really the thing is, how can you tap this channel ultimately so the whole system grows? Okay, so that's the three focus areas. That's where we're going to go today. And what we really want to do is give you the opportunity to set an intention, give you the opportunity to say, knowing what we're really going to do today, what do you need to get out of it? What's your intention? I'm going to give you a moment to do a little bit of reflection. And I really want everyone, all of us, just to take a quiet 60 seconds. And in this 60 seconds, I want you to ask yourself, why are you here today? What do you need to get out of this day? We want to earn 5 stars. What will help us earn 5 stars by helping you do? 60 seconds. Feel free to share in the chat if you want as you think through it. Go. So go ahead, if you want to share this in the chat, feel free to share this in the chat. If you want to keep it to yourself and work through it while we're together between now and next couple of hours, feel free to do that too. We're going to jump into why we're here. And as I shift things over and bring up our incredible partners, Natalie and the Community Brands team, to share a little bit about the research, I would like you to go ahead and begin to tell us what membership tactics your chapters have tried so far. Now, what I want to caution you on here is that we want to build on the successes that are happening in the field. So I love you to share the things that are working, even if they're not working at 100%, but where are there places that we can actually build? We're going to be talking about a lot more of this at CEX. I don't know how many of you know the concept of bright spots, but at CEX, we're going to be helping you take a look at what are the bright spots in your chapter field that you can then help spread. But let's start right now sharing. And while you do that, I'm going to turn things over to my wonderful teammate here, Natalie.
Thank you, Peggy. Okay, so let's get our slide deck up. Here we go. So what the research tells us. So what we've learned is that members turn to their professional membership organization for many reasons: professional development, training, certification, industry information, advocacy, networking, the list goes on. That's why Community Brands has conducted studies over the past few years to shed light on important topics, including what benefits matter most to our members, what makes members loyal to their organization, and how members' needs and preferences vary based on generation and loyalty segments. So we conducted this study, this latest study, to see how member engagement and loyalty have changed over time. And we've taken a closer look at what's behind member sentiments and behaviors based on career stage and other factors. Parallel surveys were conducted with more than 1,100 members of professional membership organizations and over 400 professionals who work at those organizations. 35% of chapters participated in that survey. So it's important to understand that as members move through their careers, behaviors change as needs change. The benefits that members value when they join change throughout their membership and their career lifetime. So a study by David Allison at Value Graphics, there we go, thank you, Chair. A study by David Allison at Value Graphics, research found that humans only agree with each other about 8% of the time. But when we look at generations, boomers agree with one another 13% of the time, Generation X 11% of the time, and millennials 15% of the time. When we look at what people value, the percentage goes up to 80% plus. That's why it's important for associations in particular to look more at career stage than generation. National needs to help chapter leaders understand membership trends so they can have successful chapters. So now we're going to do a Zoom reaction. So get ready, please, to either give us a thumbs up if this applies to you. So do you segment your members by career stage? Let's see. Okay, I'm seeing some thumbs up here. Very good. Excellent. Okay, thank you. So let's talk about when do members join. Okay, so the largest number of members join a professional organization early in their career, within 5 years of employment actually, and about 1/3 join before employment. Few join later in their career. But this data suggests that recruitment activities should be focused not only on students and recent graduates, but also those in their first few years of employment. So that's really important to understand. Next, we're going to do a poll here. So I'm going to introduce the poll. What do you think is the benefit that mid-careerists value most? So go ahead and pick your answer. And then I believe Peter is going to tell us the information. There we go, Peter.
So we're seeing the numbers coming in, and training is at the lead. Code of ethics is trailing pretty deeply, so I'm concerned about the lack of scruples in the chapter community. Training is still way ahead of everybody else. Industry information running a distant second. Advocacy and ethics again lost in the dust.
Huh. That's very interesting.
Yeah. So we have a few more folks that haven't voted yet. Don't think too much about this. Just pick something. And if somebody wants to pick ethics, that would be great, because ethics are I think there are only 5 people that pick ethics. So I'm
really actually going to speak more to ethics here in a bit.
Okay, I think the popcorn stopped popping, so I'm going to end the polling.
Oh, there we go. We know they're ethical already.
That, there we go. Training just knocked it out of the park, and industry information ran a distant second. Advocacy and ethics, not so much.
Huh.
Okay.
Okay, well,
Natalie,
that's
back
interesting.
to you.
Okay, thanks, Peter. Okay, I'm going to close there we go, close the poll. Okay, so looking at member benefit priorities by career stage provides insight into members from a different perspective. So members who are early in their career are more interested in advancement benefits, including training, there we go, and raising awareness. Those later in their career are more likely to value code of ethics and advocacy over training. All three segments list industry information as a top 3 priority. So I thought that was interesting. But the takeaway here is that the benefits that the members value change throughout their career, and participants should be working with chapters on what benefits they offer and how they communicate with their members. Okay, so we're going to look at some of the changes here. So Tira, we can advance to the slide. Okay, so I've got, yeah, Tara, oh, there we go. Thank you, Tara. Okay, so the importance of different benefits to members changes over time. What brought them here would keep them here. So if you look to the left side of this slide here, you'll notice networking, socializing, job opportunities, certifications. Look at how that changes for late career members who are looking for industry info and advocacy. And look at the code of ethics. This just makes me laugh because of the poll results. But the code of ethics goes from 10th place to first place in importance over the career stage. Okay. So we're going to talk a little bit about these numbers here. It turns out that those later in their career feel less connected and less satisfied with their organization. Yet most groups can count on them to stick around. They are the most likely to say they will renew their membership. On the other hand, those early in their career are more likely to feel connected and be satisfied with their organization, but are less likely to commit to renewing their membership. The data suggests that organizations need to prove their value year over year to help ensure retention among this younger group. Those who are mid-career are, well, middle of the road, and they tend to feel more connected with their organization than those late in their career, but are also less likely to feel satisfied, renew their membership, or promote their organization to their peers than those late in their career. So, how are we leveraging the chapters for these opportunities? So there's a lot of data here, so I'm going to call out some of the important points. This slide has a lot of information on it. But pulling these multiple data points together provides a gap analysis around member benefits. Where are organizations strong? Where are they weak? What benefits do they need to maintain? And what are some areas that are less important? The analysis shows organizations are doing well in several areas that are important to members, including sharing industry information, providing a code of ethics, offering training, and raising awareness. The same analysis shows organizations have more work to do around key areas, including offering job opportunities, gathering feedback, and providing targeted and valuable content. So if you look at that chart, the opportunity for associations vis-a-vis chapters can be in the targeted content learning and job opportunity, as well as engaging early careerists or late careerists who feel less connected. How are chapters doing that? Impact on training, resources, and metrics. Okay, so next we're going to talk about a little bit about what, so we discussed what the research tells us about career stage. So now we're going to talk a little bit about what the research tells us regarding technology. But first, let's take a poll. Okay, so how are you helping your chapters?
How are you helping your chapters?
Sorry, Peter,
Pete,
go ahead.
Next word, digital expectations. It's multiple choice, so you can pick more than one, and you get a discount if you pick 3 or more. Okay, other is doing pretty well. I'm impressed. Others in the lead. Ooh. Looks like we have some explaining to do here. So other is decidedly in the lead. So Peggy, you might want to make a note of that, and when we have one of our open discussions, that might be a place for us to explore a little more thoroughly and see what people are, other things people are doing, perhaps some ethics training.
So So Peter, the other is largely, sadly, none. So it's, one said it's none of the above, the other one said it's none of the above, the other one said none, sadly.
Huh. That is interesting.
Okay, so it looks like we're going to get what we're going to get, so I'm going to end the polling and share the results. So you get a sense of, Other was definitely in the lead, but mobile-friendly websites, integrated marketing, support with newsletters, top 3, then the robust registration and providing them with apps followed up. But Other was pretty strong today.
Yeah, Peter, just an observation. Making sure they have robust registration is kind of trailing, and I know that in the benchmarking study in the ROI, you would say, "Hey guys, that's a place to circle around." Just wanted to make that connection to what you found in the benchmarking study.
It sure is, because it both gives them financial support, and it gives them important data about who's playing. Okay, Natalie, back to you.
Thank you. Okay, so let's advance that slide, please. So we're going to talk about mobile access and member engagement. Okay, so here we go. So of course, we live in a very digital connected world. So seriously, who has their phone with them right now and within reach? Let's see some hands. And how many times have you checked it since I've started talking? Thanks, Grace. So here's what the research shows us is more than half of all website traffic is done on a mobile device. And we spend on average almost 3 hours of our day on our mobile devices. And the last thing we want to talk about here, reality, is something that we never really talk about out loud. And that's taking the phone to the restroom with you. So if you really want to peek into our future, a survey asked people under the age of 23 this question, and 80% of them owned up to taking the phone with them to the restroom. I won't call out anyone, but I'm pretty sure at least one of my kids is guilty of this, not to mention my better half, I'm just saying. So needless to say, we are glued to our mobile device, and you and your chapters must meet your members where they are. No, not in the bathroom, but on their mobile devices. So there's also still a surprisingly large gap between what's offered on a desktop versus mobile. 32% of organizations don't offer easy mobile event registration. Almost 50% of organizations don't offer content such as their blog on their mobile devices. And less than half of pros say that they offer key benefits like job boards and training or professional education on mobile. This is pretty surprising. So let's take a look at just one of those benefits, job boards. More than 50% of job searches today begin on mobile devices. So a job board section of your website that only looks good on a desktop is letting down at least half of your users on their very first step of their journey. So many associations who do have a world-class job board platform report that the job search page on their association website is their most trafficked page, as many members and non-members land there via job searches that start on Google, and where the association's site shows up in Google searches results. So keep that in mind. This is a great way to get new professionals familiar with the association, which can then be converted to members. So offering a great mobile experience is simply a must-do. Members are tied to their mobile devices, yet this study suggests that few organizations offer their benefits on mobile devices. CRPs need to work with chapter leaders on the importance of technology. Being mobile first will help drive chapter success with mobile at the forefront. Okay, next, we're going to talk about what research tells us about member experiences. Okay, so your members' last great experience is their new expectation. So let that sink in. I'm going to repeat it. Your members' last great experience is their new expectations. Members expect modern, convenient, and streamlined experiences. It's these experiences that lead to engagement. Okay, now, we also asked, in what ways have you been involved with your professional organization? Here are the top results. Attended an annual meeting, took a certification program, and got involved in continuing education. One of the very interesting things that we found is that there was no particular activity that drew in more than 50% of members. But what we're looking at here is the overall view of engagement activities, but we also saw a correlation between activities that career stages participated in to the benefits they value the most. Attending an annual meeting was the highest, with the late careerists with 50% of members attending. Working with a mentor, we saw 37% of early careerists and 26% of mid-careerists. If you remember from earlier, our early careerists value training the most. So we can see why we see such a large percentage of early careerists working with a mentor. One other interesting thing is that volunteering at an event was pretty even with every career stage. Lastly, we saw that 31% of early careerists participated in a student chapter. Your student chapters are a great source of members. Your chapters should be working closely with student chapters and working on converting them to their next level of membership upon graduation. Okay, so I think we're going to do another poll here. So I'm going to turn it over to Peter to read the poll.
Okay, which of the following do your chapters offer their members? And this is again multiple choice. So all the answers are the right answers. Some answers are just more right than the others.
So it's interesting because we did ask this question in the chapter benchmarking study, and it'll be interesting to see what this cohort says in terms of what their chapters are offering. It's kind of interesting. I know that we're asking this in a time when things have changed. So maybe all of a sudden webinars is going to be like the #1. Try to think of this like in a broader sense though. I mean, what other kinds of things have they offered? We will get back to face-to-face at some point.
Well,
how are we doing, Peter?
Other did take a hit. Other is taking a serious hit. I think all the light it got shined on it the last time around was a disappointment. So right now, the professional development workshops and seminars is #1, conference #2, webinar #3, social event #4, and everything else trailing quite a bit. We're getting close. We have a few folks we haven't heard from yet, so let's make sure we get all the voices in here.
And if you said other, I need to see your notes in the chat, right? If you did other, share in the chat. We just had a great sharing between Shelley and Kristen on advocacy. This is how you guys can make connections across the wires.
Okay, I think the popcorn's finished popping here, so I'm going to end the polling and share the results here. And you see the workshops and seminars were, as expected, #1, with webinars coming in a close second. And we were seeing across the association community that more and more chapters are beginning to offer virtual activities. And that has an interesting implication for the meaning of boundaries. And now all of a sudden, geographical boundaries don't mean the same thing. So we'll have to see how this all works out at the end of the day.
Right. And, you know, Peter, the other interesting thing is the other interesting thing is that 83% said social events. And one of the things, the other thing that we are seeing in our conversations across the association field is this shift that as you go to more virtual education, it doesn't become as critical for you to have chapters that are offering education. So social or networking or community building becomes really, really critical. So we will need to take a look at what that really means, I think, going forward, particularly when we get into the experiences. So what I want to do is continue just sharing a little bit of research. And the reason why we asked this question is because we're asking our folks to pivot, learn new technology. At the same time, we're asking them to continue to keep the lights on. I loved, and Jenny, maybe she'll share this. One of the really cool things that Jenny and I talked about was the first 8 weeks, she focused her chapter leaders on just keep the lights on. And yesterday we talked with them about what's the next 8 weeks look like. And it's the shift. And we don't want to shift them and try to do everything on their plate. We need them to focus because we have less energy right now and less time. So we need to find that focus, which is why the information I want to share with you now is going to be particularly pertinent. I'm going to pull from 2 different studies. Now, both of them are 2017, pre-COVID. But the information is so strong when you marry it with what the information we got from community brands that just talking about their research. It is so strong to say that our local groups really are engagement channels. They really are a place for people looking for education. So demand for education is high. Here's the cool thing. For 43% of the Gen Y/millennials, they actually were attending more events over time. That's right, more events. Now you may be saying that your chapter leaders are saying, but I can't get anybody to come and the young folks don't come at all. Well, I would tell you that the propensity, according to all research, is high. I love David Gamble from McKinley. He used to be with the Entomological Society, had chapters, really been in the chapter world. And he made this observation recently that chapters are going to take on an incredibly larger responsibility, or larger expectation set going forward, because we're not going to be able to travel, but we're still going to want face-to-face when the doors open. And they're going to go to the chapters. So if we take this 2017 and we say that the demand was there, the demand will be back, and in the meantime, the demand is virtual, then what's the disconnect? Well, that's why I love looking at the Eventbrite, because what the disconnect is that the key driver is not always the education. The key driver, though, is always the experience. It's the experience around learning. And in fact, 8 in 10 millennials said that their experiences shape their identity. Okay? So as we look at just the power of experiences, what's the message that we can take to our chapter leaders? My sense is that we get them to focus on the power of moments. I don't know if you've read the Power of Moments by Dan Heath. Maybe you've heard me talk about this before. I keep focusing on it because I know at the chapter level, we can't do big everything, but we can do a lot of small bigs. And so what we're talking about is, how do we help our folks create an experience that conjures that defining moment that's memorable and meaningful? Now, you can do that. Really, it's going to have one of 4 characteristics. The first is elevation. Just take something to the next level. So let me give you an example. At CEX, the first year, we had a barista. And at one point, there were so many people in line. We were trying to work. The baristas were going around the tables, taking a coffee order, making it, and delivering it. We elevated the experience of small group to another whole high level, right? So there's all kinds of small and medium and large ways that your folks can actually create elevation, take it to the next thing. The power of moments that Dan Heath talks about is the Red Popsicle hotline at the Magic Castle in LA. You're at the pool, you're hot, you call, you say, I want a popsicle. They say what flavor, you tell them, they deliver it. Elevate. Insight, taking something to the next level, helping you see something that you wouldn't have seen. I recently did a 3-hour deep dive workshop, virtual, on facilitation. And it was all about facilitating in the virtual environment. Oh my gosh, the insight from the moment I logged on to the moment I logged off, that event gave me insight. And I attended a lot of things on facilitation, most of them free, but this one created a new level of insight. Pride. Every time one of your chapters highlights somebody on social media at an event, they are targeting that pride. And finally, that connection. And I can tell you how valuable the connection is, because Shelley put in the chat today, and she said, we're getting started in advocacy, and I'd love to see what people are doing. And Kirsten came back and said, we got some toolkits, we're going to connect. Can your chapters create that kind of one-to-one connection? Because if they do, they're going to come to your events, hands down. All right, guys, tell me who does not need a 5-minute break right now. All right, I am going to put my timer on. Here we go. I'm going to set us for 5 minutes. Stretch, bathroom break, do whatever you have to do. Go off camera if you want. Mute yourself so that you can do whatever you need to do. 5 minutes and counting. See you soon. All righty. How are you guys doing today? We doing good? So put in if you can hear me and I'm not frozen, put into the chat what's your aha so far. We did a lot of research. Maybe you have some questions about it. If you do, go ahead and put that in. But go ahead, tell me what's on your mind now. Tell me what you've heard that is good. Tell me what questions that you have as we go into our next part. So our goal, as I mentioned at the beginning of the agenda, was to give you this incredible opportunity to hear some research, right? To get a better understanding of what can we build our ideas and solutions on. And we mentioned to you that in doing that, we were then going to take that research and apply it in 3 focus areas. And so the 3 focus areas, again, just so we're all in the same space, is engagement. So how can our chapters generate engagement based on career stage? Technology, how can chapter leaders tap technology to reach more members? And experience, how can chapters create the experiences, those power moments? So the way we're going to run the rest of our time together is we're going to give you a few case studies that illustrate a direction that the research could point us. So these are examples that we found from the field where chapters have either taken a look at a career stage question and responded to it with an engagement opportunity, where they have harnessed technology to reach members, or where they have created a unique experience that really honed in on those power moments. These are not the answers. These are hopefully just what I would call springboards for conversations, because what we're going to do is give you some examples on engagement, then send you into some breakout rooms. We're going to give you some examples on technology, send you in, experience, send you into those breakout rooms. We're going to do the engagement sequence first. We're going to give you time for lunch, a little bit of white space, 30 minutes. Going to come back and then do the second 2. Okay? Y'all with me on all of this? Says this sounds good so far? Just shake your heads, put your thumbs up, clap. Yes, awesome. Okay. I know it's a little tough. All right, guys. I want to bring Natalie back because I think that the engagement based on career stage is a great one for us to get started at, because it does feeds into the other 2. And Natalie, give us a couple of real life examples.
Absolutely. Thanks, Peggy. I do have 3 examples for you. So my first example is an example from one of our staff members. This local chapter implemented installment payments during the recession of 2008. At the same time, installment payments were introduced purely as a retention strategy. It worked. About 20% of members utilized the installment payment option as they experienced unemployment or pay cuts. Now, what the chapter sees is that installment payments are utilized more in the second year of membership with early careerists. Typically, the young careerists are excited to join, so they just pay the full amount of their dues in the first year, but then they utilize the payment option once they are invested in the value of their organization. This tactic has been key in retaining early careerists, and they are anticipating that it will be utilized even more, sadly, due to the current state of affairs. So that was one example. The next example is from one of our community brands clients, the National Society of African Americans in Human Resources. This organization has 30 chapters around the nation. In the last 5 years, they started to see a growing student membership, and those students were continuing membership upon graduation. But these new members had different engagement expectations. They found that the students and early careerists wanted daily engagement. They introduced an online community for their entire organization, and people were excited to communicate with one another. So with the support of National, chapters saw the importance and impact of engagement by career stage and started to implement more programs geared towards career stages. Again, sort of a repetitive theme here that we're seeing today. And one last example, this organization has 150 global chapters. Okay, Tara, if we can, sorry, I think we have just a little bit of a delay on the slides. It could just be because of the internet. So this last example, this organization has 150 chapters. A local chapter increased their student participation by offering chapter meetings at a university for students that were graduating. And they offered 2 different types of meetings: networking events and educational sessions. The networking events connected nearly graduated students with the mid to late career members to discuss securing jobs or providing career advice, such as resume reviews. The second type of chapter meeting would offer educational opportunities such as presentations related to their interested fields and skills that might be needed for their position. This also included a recording of the presentation to share with additional students or early careerist members. The chapter was able to combine in-person events with technology to connect with and increase the amount of student chapter members. This resulted in an increase in chapter membership from students and early careerists. So that's pretty interesting stuff. So now, as Peggy had mentioned, I think we're going to go into some breakout rooms and discuss how your organizations are or can capitalize on targeting by career stage.
Okay, folks. Now it's the fun time. Here's how we'll work with our breakout rooms. Everybody who has participated in breakout rooms before, raise your hands. Anybody new to this? So we want to make sure that those of you who have done this before can share perhaps your wisdom as you get into the breakout room if anybody has any difficulty in navigating. So basically what we'll be doing is that we have these breakout rooms, and Zoom auto-magically assigns people to the rooms. So we're going to have 9 breakout rooms, and there'll be 7 or 8 people in each of the rooms, and Zoom has just sort of gone out there and randomly grabbed your names and shoved them into a room. So I don't know who's going to be with whom, but you'll be in a room with some other CRPs and people interested in this conversation. What I'd like you to be sure to do, and this was covered in our previous email to everybody before the event, is make sure on the way into the room, note the room number that you will see presented as you were entered into the room. Once you get into the room, briefly introduce yourself to your roommates, and don't take too much time here because we're going to want to have as much time as possible for the conversation. We'll have about 15 minutes per breakout, so we want to make sure we optimize that time. And then after you introduce yourselves, pick a note taker or volunteer a note taker, or just tell somebody they're going to be the note taker. And you also want to select maybe a facilitator, and somebody can volunteer themselves. But those are the first things we want to get done once we get into the room. Then we have our note taker, who will have the following responsibilities. The note taker will open the Google Doc and navigate to the appropriate section in that doc. Now, you received also in advance of the meeting a URL for the Google Doc, and right now Sarah has posted the URL for the Google Doc into the chat. So somebody should make sure you grab that and put it in your paste buffer so you've got it handy. Maybe stick it in a doc someplace so you can get it when you need it. But once you get into the room and someone is assigned as the note taker, that individual should open that Google Doc. And then at the top of the Google Doc, there's a place where you can, there are named anchors in the Google Doc that would allow you to navigate directly to the space where you were having the first conversation. And once you get there, you'll look at all the different room numbers, the breakout room numbers, and you want to put yourself in that breakout room space on the Google Doc. That's where you're going to capture the discussion highlights, and you can add the names of the people who contribute as well as your own if you like. Not required, but make sure you get into the right space, the right breakout room, and then obviously the right discussion area. So the note taker is going to be responsible for making sure that we can recover all the great conversation that occurs. Then the facilitator will follow up, and that person's role is perhaps in some respects the most important. The first, of course, will be using the questions that are in the Google Doc, and we'll be going through in just a minute, to sort of guide the conversation. And we don't want to necessarily narrow the conversation too much, but we want to give it some focus. So use those questions to guide the conversation. And as a facilitator, you want to keep the conversation focused and moving, but I like to say, be the wind, not the rudder, right? Be the wind, not the rudder. You want to be felt, but you don't want to be steering the conversation too much. And you also want to make sure you gently bring everyone into the conversation. There are probably some people in your room who will be, they have all the answers to everything, and that's okay. But we also want to make sure that the other folks who are perhaps being quiet get a chance to participate. You're going to have about 15 minutes, so you want to keep an eye on the time. I'll be sending you a 5-minute notice and a 1-minute warning that things are wrapping up. So when you see that 1-minute warning, you probably want to do some kind of summarization of the process. And then, of course, you can ask for help if it's needed. So if you scroll to the bottom of your windows, once you get in the meeting room, once you scroll to the bottom of the Zoom room window, you'll actually see a little Ask for Help button under the ellipsis. So go to More, and then you ask for help, and then I'll come and do what I can to help you out. And then, of course, everybody needs to stay focused. We want to keep the conversation moving in a good direction and participate, but please share the mic. And last but not least, you want to make sure that you have fun, because that's, hey, we already have enough things in life to make it difficult. So let's make sure we have a good time and enjoy ourselves while we're there. So with that, let's take a look at the couple of questions we're going to tackle first. And these are building on the areas that Natalie just discussed with us. The first question being, what are your chapters currently doing to capitalize on early careerists, mid-careerists, and late careerists? And I'd like you to say that 3 times real fast. And then thinking about those career stages, what could your chapters do to engage members? And perhaps what could you do to help your chapters better understand what's going on in those stages and help them develop programming and services and activities that really tailor themselves to that space? So those are the 2 key questions we want you to tackle in this little breakout. And in just a second here, I'm going to punch a button, and you're going to be brought into each of your respective breakout rooms. And again, if you get there and you have any difficulty at all, please be sure to click on that Ask for Help button, and I'll come running as fast as I can. So are we ready? Everybody ready? Are we set?
Let's do it.
Let's go. Welcome back, everybody.
That was fun.
I've always wanted to
So
tell
there were a few folks who arrived late, and so they didn't get into a breakout room, but you will get into the second and third breakout rooms that will be coming up after lunch. So I just wanted to take a minute here and see if anybody had any questions or concerns, or if there was anything they struggled with when they were in their breakout rooms. And you can unmute yourself and talk, or you can send something through chat, or you can just give me one of those looks that says, "Don't do that to me again."
Peter, I had a question. Would you be willing to do a webinar on how to do this breakouts and the Zoom polls, or a training for us? That was part of what I wanted to get out of today, was just trying how this all would work.
So do you want to learn how to do it the right way, or you do want to learn how I did it?
Well, the Peter and Peggy way seemed well for a lot.
And actually, that's a great idea, Jenny. We've been doing a lot. I think we've been learning quite a bit every time we do this, and I think that the silver lining, if we could use that phrase in the context of what's going on right now, is that we have learned to master some technology with which we weren't familiar before, and we've also discovered that while it's not a full substitute for in your face, standing next to somebody, it actually does bring some surrogate for proximity that I think people are saying, this isn't so bad. And so that's why I think that as we come out of this in the spring of 21 or fall of 21 or 19 or 2025 or 2060, whenever we get on the other side of this thing, I'm not sure that we're going to slide back to what was the norm before. I think there's going to be a lot more leveraging of technology to help people connect with each other. And I think one of the neatest elements of this is that because we are able to reach the people who wouldn't get in their cars before and drive to a meeting, we're going to connect with people we never connected with before at all, and particularly at the chapter level. The flip side of this conversation, and we're beginning to see this with some of our consulting and management clients, is that because the geographical boundaries they don't exist in this world, that all of a sudden there are some potentials for conflict and duplication that we need to perhaps from a national level figure out how we can coordinate so that we keep our chapters on good terms with each other and of course on good terms with us and the members. So I assume that at some point or other Peggy's going to come back in here and have a little bit more of a conversation. Don't know.
Okay, I was muted. I was talking the whole time.
That worked just fine for me.
Yes. No, I was just kidding. So guys, we've got we're going to break you for lunch because you can't sit in front of a screen for too long, but we're going to do that in about 10 minutes. And I'd love to have an opportunity right now for kind of an open sharing. We only gave you 15 minutes, and admittedly, you have to, in that conversation, you have to introduce each other. And in my group, we were very quick, not at picking the facilitator and the note taker. We still had a good conversation, and the Google Docs will be a resource that you, by being a participant in this event, will have access to. And so I mentioned to my group in my room that it's hard for the note taker to capture everything. So feel free during the break to go in there and add any notes that you want to your group. But because we were all in smaller groups and we didn't get a chance to hear all the conversation, who wants to share an aha or an idea that they're going to build on in from this first round on how do we deal with career stages? So you can unmute, or you can raise your hand, or you can go to the chat. You can do anything you want. 3, 2, 1, someone talk. Keep in mind, I believe in volunteering if I don't see anybody.
And I can vouch for that.
Okay, anybody from Breakout Room 8, that was my group, want to share one nugget that we talked about?
It's Michelle. I'll go, Peggy. We talked about most of our associations are focused on the early level, entry level careerist, and that the focus should be more on the mid and later career level members.
Yeah, I was, and you shared, of course, that you've got your folks have to come through the system, right, to get the licensure. So you have a natural way of identifying those early careers. That was interesting how we were trying to figure out how do you really make the mid careers and the late careers involved. Thanks for sharing, Michelle. You get extra points.
Thank you.
Share.
This is Natalie. I'll share on behalf of group number 4, and Jenny, I might call you out, sorry. But I think one of our main focuses was virtual mentoring. So I thought that was interesting. Getting people involved in mentoring where they don't have to be face-to-face per se.
Yeah, so what I was sharing with that is I've sat in on so many chapter board meetings where we've talked about mentoring, and you talk about it and it's one of those that you just go in a circle and it never seems to get off the ground and do it. And it was one of those ahas that, you know, this might be something that actually would work really well virtually. It is doing virtual mentoring versus in person, and the time commitment and how, you know, all the technology platforms.
So I saw somebody mention the Higher Logic mentoring. They have a mentor meter. Is that what it's called? Mentor or something? I should know, but at any rate.
Mentor match.
Mentor match. Thank you, Marianne. And a quick there on that finger to unmute. That's awesome. Someone who's done too much Zooming, she's got it now without missing a beat. I love it. Anybody else using anything else? We tried with the PRSA Maryland chapter. We used the LinkedIn. It's no longer there, but we used it. You could do a small group, and we just did a group for virtual. We called them short-term mentoring. Anybody else used any other technology or anything to help out, or? Okay.
I was going to share, Peggy, from group 7, that mentoring continued to be a major theme. I think Crystal Edwards has found some success. So Crystal, if you want to add anything, but also the interior designers are doing something really cool. Their chapters are doing an MBA style kind of program. That's like a year-long training educational program that sets them up to say, how do they move through their firm? And so that was a really cool idea.
Cool, very neat. Does Krista want to jump on and just share a little bit about the mentoring?
So this is Crystal. We have previously used Higher Logic's Mentor Match program years ago when we initially started. And that's when our mentoring program was actually offered and conducted and managed at the national level. And we had some success with that initially for maybe the first couple of years, and then it kind of started to dwindle down a little bit. And so in our trying to reach out and trying to figure out what happened, in our research, we determined that the mentoring would be much better utilized at the chapter level. And so we designed a mentoring toolkit. We did pull it off virtually from Higher Logic, but we designed and developed a toolkit for the chapters to implement locally at the chapter level, and it included of course, there was some correlation between the mentoring program and our members are infection preventionists. And we had a newly designed competency model. So based on the competencies of infection preventionists and how it is that they are doing their jobs, what they should know at different levels in their career. And the mentoring program followed that model and kind of walked them through that way. There were what do you call them, evaluations that they could use, forms that they could use through the process, but in terms of timing and things like that, they could work that out themselves. And then they would submit at the end of their mentoring sessions or relationships, they would send that back to us, feedback that they had for us to kind of do some more tweaking and over time. So that's how we've done it up until this point.
Breakout,
Very cool.
I will represent Breakout Room 6. Our discussion veered more towards the university student aspect of the career and the first year of membership kind of after graduating college and things like that. So offering discounts or free membership for those that are just out of college, for student members, things like that. So we talked a lot about that aspect and hopefully showing the value of the membership so that they would continue to be professional members along their career. So.
And one of our group members has something called, what did he say? A University Relations Committee, which I'm not exactly sure what is involved in that, but it sounded very interesting to me. And I'm guessing that's to get the schools to promote affiliations with associations or something like that. So.
Great. Whoever owns that, do they want to jump on real quickly and just share a little bit about that affiliate? Because I think sometimes we have to be a little more organized or a little less organized in order to be able to be able to activate these things at the chapter level. So it's good to see both sides of it.
Well, one of our board members, we asked her recently why she joined. She's been a member for years and years, and why did she join? And her answer was because her college professor told her that she must. And so she did, and she's been a member for, I don't know, 20 years or something. So, it makes sense.
Yeah, it ties back directly to what the research that Natalie shared about, so many people join right from the student chapter level. I know that we've got a son who was an AIA member, a student member, and now he's in his first year as an architect and is involved. And I don't know that he would have gotten involved if he hadn't come through the school, for the student chapter. Now the question is, will that chapter be able to keep him involved? And that's kind of up to question. And that leads us to some more introspection about how are our chapters really putting their communications in a way that connects with those, with each and every one of those different career stages. Because he told me how critical it was to think about the fact that as a early careerist coming to his first new member gig with the chapter, was they went on and on and on about national and on and on and on about the advocacy agenda. And he kept saying, but I need a project. I need to continue my development, and was quite turned off initially. So we'll see what happens there. We're tracking this because we think it's an interesting story. So I've got 12 o'clock. And I want to be conscious of our time. And I wanted to give you all a 30-minute break, an opportunity for you to just get away from the screen again, if you can, I know you might have to get to some emails, or you might have a kid that has a math question that's sitting on a screen, but the degree to which you can get away from the screens for about 30 minutes, go ahead and do that. Grab some, oh, I see, oh, Louise, Louise is hiding her peers, her co-employees today. I love it.
It might be lunchtime for the whole brood.
Oh, well, our timing is perfect then.
Since it's lunchtime and ethics got such a poor ride, I think everybody should have a bowl of scruples with whatever sandwich that you have.
So we'll look at you guys beginning to convene back 12:25, ready to hit the road at 12:30. We're going to leave this up. I'm going to put a slide up that shows that we're on lunch break. You guys have fun, take notes, think, wow, give yourself some space, feed the family, get a stiff one. We'll see you back here. Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. So one of the things that we just demonstrated for you was one of the effective practices in having online training that lasts more than 60 minutes is to build in that 5-minute break, build in a slightly longer break after you've been going for a little while. Generally, they speak about that in about 2 hours. Since we've got a 3-hour format here, we did it maybe a little bit earlier, but giving people the opportunity to step away. So that's an effective practice. If you're going to begin to build some of your own virtual training, you definitely want to begin to think about some of those things. Okay, Sarah has put the Google Doc into the into our chat again, so you guys should be having it ready. I know over lunch, I think we had a couple of people join us. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm sorry that you came in on the Let's Eat slide, but don't worry, it's now going to be the Let's Share slide. And kicking us off on our next round of idea swapping is going to be, of course, the technology guru that you and I all love, the lovely Miss Charlotte.
Thanks, Peggy. All right, so we're going to dive in and just to kind of reflect on what we covered earlier. So we've seen the research, we've seen examples of chapters and organizations leveraging a focus on the early careerist to their advantage, and we had a conversation about it. So we're going to dive into some real examples about the impact of technology and how it can empower chapters to make broader impact. A little caveat here, we don't have a heavy focus on the early careerist throughout these examples, but you can absolutely apply the concepts in that way. So we'll dive into that. So this first example here shows how simple, relevant changes can have a big impact. This is a chapter that had a lot of success in recruiting early careerists until about 2014, when they really started to see that taper off and start to see a decline. This chapter also had a non-mobile website, and they were using PDF member applications. So what did they do? They took a pretty simple approach and they turned their PDF member application into a mobile responsive form. And they also took the opportunity to update some of their messaging to target the early careerist audience. So they focused on messaging that represented leadership skills and career growth, and started tapping into some of those things that specific career stage would be looking for. These changes resulted in a 50% increase in new membership, specifically within that early careerist category. It's a pretty big win, if you ask me. It sounds like they made up some ground and then some in terms of what they lost. So we hope at this point that most of your chapters have started to move away from PDF applications and have had an opportunity to kind of take that leap into mobile responsiveness. However, we know not everyone's there yet. Everyone's running a little different race, and that's okay. But use this as an opportunity to think about where are those areas of impact for you, and where can you make a few small tweaks that can have a big ripple effect. And keep in mind that things don't always have to be a major overhaul. There are tools out there that allow you to build mobile responsive forms for free or almost free. And then updating your messaging is just taking the time to know what your members are interested in, what's driving them. and then updating that. If you are looking for a list of tools that can be leveraged to create forms or capture that member application data, let us know. We can probably share that as a resource. We did an entire session on it at CEX a couple years ago. So we have some resources that we can share with you there. Diving into our second example, this one doesn't necessarily speak to the careerists, but it's absolutely relevant in how chapters can provide unique opportunities to engage members and the communities around them, because we know that's a really important part as well. So I should note that this actually comes from a sorority chapter versus an association chapter. I'm a big believer in pulling inspiration and ideas from industries because I think we can all learn from one another, and this is definitely an example of that. So the situation here is this specific chapter usually hosts an annual educational chapter fundraising event called the Pink Pancake Breakfast. And this event had to be moved to a virtual environment due to COVID-19. So this is actually a very recent and relevant example. So what did they do? They hosted this virtual pancake breakfast so that the educational content could still take place. Individuals actually made pancakes at home and hopped on a Zoom call, and they all ate together while they went through the educational content. They also, this is where it gets kind of cool. So they also created a crowdfunding link through the platform CrowdChange, and this allowed them to do a couple of things. Number one, it allowed them to share a donation link with the attendees that were on the call and at the virtual event. It also allowed them to share the donation link with non-attendees through their social media channels and also through all of their other communication networks. And then it allowed, the third thing is it allowed attendees and non-attendees to share with their networks. So when you start thinking about the ripple effect of that and the multiplier of how many people this link reached and how many more donations they could actually bring in versus if they just had this as an in-person event. So just because it moved virtual, they didn't have to give up the impact or the fundraising dollars. And why does this matter now? It's because we have to find ways to not only continue the impact that chapters have, but also find ways to expand it and multiply it. Sometimes apparently it takes a pandemic to spark some new ideas due to some new constraints. But there's usually always room for technology in these types of situations, and they are usually part of the equation. So when you look at like the long-term result of this, they're setting a new precedent to continue to set them up for success when they go back to having the event in person. Now, when they have the event in person, they can leverage the crowdfunding platform in combination with that event and continue to extend their reach and impact. So I would encourage you to think about how you can help your chapters extend that reach by tapping into technology and the networks that belong to not only the organization, but also the individual members. Because there's a lot of potential there. So I'm actually going to add in here a fun little hypothesis that I've kind of been playing around with in my head. So I'll tell you right up front that I have zero data on this to support it, but I do believe that there is an opportunity for fraternities, sororities, and associations to partner when it comes to early careerists. As Natalie pointed out in the data earlier, early careerist doesn't mean age. However, many early careerists tend to be those college graduates or those looking to jump into the workforce. So there's definitely a value add for both. College students are looking for internships, job opportunities, ways to network and socialize. They have no idea what the real work world is like usually, or what their profession that they're going into is going to look like. So they want to gain that experience and insight. So that doesn't change when they graduate and start a career. How can you help add value to these fraternity and sorority organizations and their chapters and their members? And how can they help you boost early careerist membership upon graduation? They are a very specific subgroup that's accustomed to the idea of membership and being part of a community. And I think that's an especially important opportunity for those who don't have student chapters and those who maybe don't have those university relations committees that someone mentioned earlier. But they will have high expectations.
So hold on a second, I want to pause for just a moment, Charlotte. Only because someone said you froze. And I think what you were saying was so cool. At the very beginning, you said, you were basically, I want you to repeat what you're basically saying, is that there is this opportunity for this partnering. Go ahead and say it one more time to make sure we get it.
Yep, absolutely. So there is an opportunity for, or I believe there's an opportunity for fraternities and sororities to partner with associations and for associations to partner with them to connect the early careerists as they graduate and move into the professional world. They are looking for ways to engage, they're looking for ways to connect and learn about the professions that they are jumping into. And they also are accustomed to the idea of membership and being part of a community. So you're not trying to convert these individuals who maybe weren't part of student chapters, or you may not have a university relations committee yet. But there's a lot of collaboration that could happen between those two organizations to deliver value to members on both sides. So if anybody knows anyone who's doing this, please let me know. I'm really curious and I'm looking for some examples. And I am hoping to prove out this hypothesis. So I'm just going to throw that out into the world, leave it there, let you noodle on it. And then we are going to jump into our idea storming questions so that you can get back into your breakout rooms and collaborate around ideas of technology and chapters. So we want to help you build a plan. One of the goals I saw in the chat earlier was to get a template or a roadmap for a strategy. So this is your opportunity to do that and collaborate with your peers here and start building that out. So our first question is, what technology do chapters need help with? Is it technology that they need? Is it technology that they have that can be repurposed or optimized to achieve a member engagement goal, and so on? If you were to create a digital strategy for chapters, what might exist within that? To get you started on that one, think about maybe whether or not chapters have been, what chapters are still using outdated processes. What does that look like? And are any of those processes deterring maybe some of your early careerists? And then the second one here is, how can you use the research that we went through today to help get commitment from the C-suite? You need to build a business case to move some of these things forward. How do you get that commitment and that buy-in from the rest of your organization? So I think you guys know the drill. You should have the Google Doc open. Peggy sent the link in the chat. Peter will put you into your Zoom rooms. Pay attention to your room number. Navigate to that section within the Word doc. Designate your note taker and also designate your facilitator, and then start jotting down all of your awesome ideas. Did I miss anything, Peggy?
No, I think I think we're solid. Okay,
right.
Peter, hit the magic
So the only
button.
thing
Let's
I'll
do
add
it.
is that there are a few people who showed up on a different schedule, and so they didn't make the first to breakout room. So this will be your first opportunity to go play. There'll be plenty of people, hopefully, in your room that can help you navigate if you're at all confused about it. If anybody is missing the link for the Google Doc, please make sure you let us know, or get it from somebody else in your group. But with that, I think we're ready to go. I'm going to click this little magic button right here, and you all disappear. Bye-bye. All the liquor bottles and everything trash people threw on the floor.
Yes, Jenny, yes, the questions were harder, but you know, one of the reasons why we would love to spend a whole day on this, right? Where we could have gone some deeper dives, but we're using this technology, we're using this opportunity to listen as much as to learn from our perspective, from the Bill Highway Community Brands Mariner, because we can develop more content and more conversations around these. So don't worry. And Kirsten, don't worry. I saw some cool things coming out of your folks. So what I saw just very quickly was this notion that there's a real problem with the fact that we've got so many different sizes and shapes at the field level. And so it's hard to say a one size fits all across for technology. But there were some interesting ideas, including like, how can we streamline across the chapters? And you know, when you can streamline across the chapters and create at least find one or two pieces of technology that are across the chapters, you create a many-to-many help desk. You create this opportunity where there can be some serious peer-to-peer helping and training and mentoring. So great idea to sort of put out there. Let's shift the gears a little bit to some real life examples, to talking about the experiences. You know, one of the things that we're really trying in this particular day was to create power of moments for folks here. We really wanted to be able to have you guys have an experience where you could get an aha or two. And that's really what we're talking about helping our chapters do. And so in this third and final round that we're going to go into, the questions I think are a little bit easier than the last ones. And maybe a little bit more playful, because we really want you to get creative and we want you to share. And to give you a little bit of opportunity to get creative, I'm going to share with you 2 examples I found from the field. So this is the picture of an incredible in-person event that the Young Presidents Organization of Pittsburgh ran a couple years ago. What they did was just phenomenal. They actually brought in 2 world famous sumo wrestlers. You see one on the corner of your thing there. Celebrity judges. And so by celebrity judges, they used they had the quarterback from the Pittsburgh Steelers, and they had the voice of the Pittsburgh Steelers, all involved in this event. So it became a really cool, like amplified event just for that, just to be around a Steeler, just to be around a sumo wrestler. They had a private, before they opened to the public, all of the kids of the members could come in, and they got a really cool, fun private session. You can see the little kid here. I mean, I am sure that his dad is just feeling this incredible sense of how my chapter has delivered something that I can share with my kids, right? It was done with the YMCA, so some of the ticket prices went to support the YMCA. Afterwards, they had the voice of the Pittsburgh Steeler do a mock wrestle with the sumo wrestler, and it turned into an amazing community event. There are so many, when I talked about the 4 elements, they certainly took a family day and they elevated it to some incredible directions, right? The pride was in the idea of being able to be a leader in this and to really be able to guide the community and to show how they had a commitment to it. The connections were just these incredible, parent to child to sumo wrestler. I mean, all kinds of these really incredible connections. So really it made a big difference, and it created an insight around how you can bring the community together. So one quicker example that I want to share with you. The ADHA has got an incredible chapter up in Colorado, and they jumped in with both feet when COVID hit, and there's been a lot of advocacy work behind them. They've done a lot of work with things, but one of the things they launched was virtual coffee break and happy hour. You can see there's different times. What was really cool was that they got some really fun, uplifting materials out there, but equally important is they made sure that they did a wonderful integration of we want to feel your pain, but we also want to give you some release. And so they had this incredible Zoom yoga lesson. So this group consistently outperforms other chapters in engagement, in new members, and new member retention. Why? Because they do a lot of small things like this all year long. So taking these as just kind of some kind of idea, launch back into your groups. And I want to give you a couple of questions to think about. And hopefully these are going to be a little bit easier for you. Around what moments might your chapter build powerful experiences for their members? Don't limit it to education. The sumo wrestlers is certainly an example that's not education. The yoga, okay? So what moments, small parts of an event or an activity that they could reach out and make a difference? How can you assist your chapters in creating those experiences? What kinds of resources, training, services will you be able to maybe buy or leverage on behalf? Now, I know that easy answer here, because a lot of you said in the last one, is get them Zoom, give them a GoToWebinar. Go beyond that. We want to create an incredible experience. So what else can you give them? Can you train them, as Jenny suggested earlier? Can you train them on how to use it? Can you give them facilitation tips? Can you give them special prizes that they can give away? And finally, how can you share or leverage one chapter's experience success across all chapters? In other words, you got one like Colorado. How do you share that across the system? With the ADHA, we ran an incredible Zoom webinar in which we shared about how they built those programs. How can you share or leverage one chapter's success? Peter, let's send people. We're going crazy on this one. I love it. You guys were having some real great idea sharing. So that was super cool. I have to ask about the talent show over Zoom. I think we want to learn a little bit more about that. And then the community service projects, bonding them, coming up with topic bonding from the virtual world. So a couple of really cool ideas were coming on this. I did see an idea here, and I was scrolling to find it because it sounded really intriguing, but this notion of, on the question of how can I take a chapter success and get it out there across the system? And one person said a private playlist of, I guess, volunteer leader videos, one up real quick thing to share what they did. Imagine a playlist of, say, 45-second videos on, we tried this and it worked, and like 3 or 4 things on it, and then you could connect with that person to learn more. I wrote that one down. That was an aha and a takeaway from me. And then one person I saw asked the question, yeah, but it'll all be different again in 6 months when we go back to face. And so the interesting point about that is, for those of you that are in the that have been on Collaborate and all, most people are suggesting that it won't be 6 months. That you know, for many parts, it could be really 21 before we get back to face-to-face events. So we may have to help our chapters on a longer period than we initially thought, which is something to consider. But I think the other element of this is, you know, the research showed in 2017, 2018, and 2019 that some groups were having struggle getting people some really cool events. And it was because their events were the same old. And so I'm wondering if some of the cool things they're doing now, even though they're virtual, could be taken into the face-to-face when they come back. So the natural thing I think of is something like a scavenger hunt, or using Jeopardy at a business meeting, or bringing in Kahoot, where you do some quizzing after you've taught somebody something in an educational setting. You know, so I'm sitting here thinking, okay, yeah, there's no question in all of our minds that we have to help our folks do something differently. And just maybe it's going to be an opportunity for us to say, what you did, it worked. So try some more. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen one more time. Okay, let me ask this question. Can you guys, hang on one second. You know how it is, folks, when you're maneuvering around. All right, we've come down to our last, 5 minutes that we have together. And it's time for us to give ourselves all a pause and ask the question, coming from all of this, what's your number one? What are you going to take away from this? What are you going to do differently? The reality is that we just went through a lot of ideas. We just throw things out, but you still have a to-do list on your desk. We know that you have Outlook tasks or whatever. And so you're not going to be able to commit to everything, but there must be one thing. So what I would really love to have you do is take this moment now to jot something down, jot it down. And if you want to, share it in the chat. Sometimes the very act of sharing your number one, what I'm going to do, is the catalyst that helps you get it done. Sometimes sharing it, someone else is going to say, that's my number one. Let's get together offline and talk about that. So do that now. Give yourself the gift of declaring a takeaway from this conversation that we've had, and do it in a way that allows other people to see, and if there's a match for you guys to get together. Also, just a quick reminder that the Google Doc is packed full of ideas. So please, keep that bookmarked. We'll send it out to you again. It'll be an awesome place for us to actually do some post-workshop collaboration, right? we could actually, you know, use that Google Doc to keep the conversation going. So, and I know that, you know, I love when people say, do you have a post-workshop collaboration group or area? At this point, let's use the Google Docs, right? Let's use that and give ourselves an opportunity. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to ask you to keep doing that. And I want to also offer you, though, as we come to a close here, that the learning should not stop the end of the learning. In fact, one of the things I did while you guys were busy creating ideas was we had a slide with some really good links on it for some additional reading just about this program, and I threw that in the Google Docs, so you have that. Also, don't forget that I also threw the pre-reading links there so that you have those as well. Just really wonderful ideas. But I want to highlight two things coming up real quickly here. Next week, May 22nd, 1 p.m. Eastern, is the Virtual Idea Swap Chapters in the COVID Era. We are taking your questions. We are going to build using Zoom breakout rooms. We are going to build an opportunity for us to discuss and share. I think teeing off of what Jenny and I talked about yesterday, it ought to be the next 8 weeks, right? It ought to be now, what do we do? How do we help our chapters focus on the next 8 weeks? So join us for that. You can get the link at the Mariner Management resource. You can see the blog post or ask me for it. We'll be glad to get that to you. And coming June 18th at 12 p.m. Eastern is going to be our next Bill Highway Mariner webinar with a salute to community brands, piloting to virtual. This is a working title, but we've got 2 organizations in particular, one who will have completed their transition to a virtual leadership training program, and we're going to share the lessons learned. If you have already pivoted your chapter leadership conference to virtual, please send me an email. We want to bring you on too. We want to make sure this case studies that we're all learning from each other. So please, 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 if you've already done it, tell us so we can call on you to share. If you haven't done it, be there or be square. Am I right? Am I right? Yes, of course I'm right. Awesome. Guys, we never miss an opportunity to remind you that October 26th is CEX. It's the community. It's the community gathering for all things components. Watch for news on how that's unfolding, and make sure that you have that on your date. And I'm going to leave you with kind of a call to action, right? Here's the call to action as you sign off, how will you help chapters optimize engagement around career stages, technology, experience the power of moments? All right, guys, we got to sign off. We got to get you back to your families, to your work, to your chapter leaders. We'll see you hopefully on our virtual idea swap on the virtual idea swap, and then June 18th for that webinar on how to turn your association virtual. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Hey, my community brands team, my Bill Highway team, shout out thank yous. Natalie from Community Brands, thank you.
Standing ovation. Standing ovation.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Enjoy
See you
your day.
soon.
Bye-bye.